Hello everybody, welcome back to Watching Walford. I'm Ash, I'm joined by Piggy.
Hey, bonjour, signor.
And today we're going to do a little imagination task. We're going to do a little bit of theory crafting. As someone on the Eastenders subreddit has kind of posed the question, how do you think they would do a male version of the Six? Now, I would say we're just going to go through a lot of the comments, but a lot of the comments are absolute wanky bullshit. you couldn't do that. The amount of misogyny that would be going on. It's like, mate, if they do it well, there wouldn't be any fucking issues, would there? You know?
I just want to say that there kind of was a six with the men. Obviously, the Aidan Maguire situation. I know that because I watched some of it. It was kind of, I know it wasn't really a six, but they were trying to get rid of him. So
Yeah.
Technically, guys, it is.
But yeah,
And
it's it's an interesting concept. What is the concept of the Six? It is six people bonded together through one shared trauma that they then are going to spend all the time trying to cover up and hide. Why is this trauma expected? Well, because throughout the year since February, all of the women in the Six have been basically made their life living hell by the men who they are like with or, dealing with. But there's no way to suggest that you couldn't flip this like script and do it in the opposite way.
you can.
Like,
It just, you can't. The problem is, people like to get wrapped up about silly things.
people like to get upset about the culture war and gender politics.
Yeah, like, we won't go into it, but people, like, you merely mentioned that your pronouns are he, him. You're gonna get fucking Dave from Sheffield going, pronouns are not a thing. Back in my day, it wasn't a fucking thing. You were either a male or a female, or you were a fucking whale. It's like, Jesus Christ. All I said was I'm a male. Like, people get offended over silly things. Like, unless it's literally like, haha, woman bad, men good.
Yeah.
Then I can see the point getting upset. But if it's literally just men bonded together because women have been abusing them, I think it could work. Unless you can't, but the problem is you can't have it be hard men like Phil or Keanu. It has to be. Well, you can, but I wouldn't do it. I really
think you could. I think it would be a good way to. It would be a good way to show the vulnerabilities within the characters, right? It would be a really interesting way to get a different perspective. Because nobody would expect, like, it's going to sound like macho bullshit, but, nobody would expect Phil to be, like, taken in and abused, for example, Because it's Phil Mitchell, and he wouldn't talk about it. But, there's a chance at his lowest. Like, let's imagine in some weird world that Stella comes back. The Stella who abused Ben. Let's say she comes back somehow. And she now learns that Phil is an alcoholic. And so she makes Phil... I mean, it's going to get fucked up. So prepare yourselves. Imagine she gets Phil hooked on booze again. And then he has to develop a dependency on her. And so now it's flipped, Now it's completely like Phil is dependent on Stella, who is treating him horribly and abusing him. It would be an interesting way to do. I think another issue would kind of crop up is that it would be quite hard to... A lot of the men in the Six are either established enough to kind of be able to wash this off in about a year's time, Once they move on to a different storyline, it won't linger as much. But also, a bunch of them are fairly newcomers, so some of them are leaving, some of them probably aren't going to be there for another year. Like, it would be hard to bring in these characters to be there to, like, torment the men. Like, you can't just suddenly... I mean, you probably could, like, make, like, Stacey, for example. Maybe Stacey's cheating on people, like, massive, like, affairs with everyone. But I think at this current time, it's pretty unfathomable because obviously a lot of the men have been doing the dodgy shit and the women have been on the receiving end. There are reasons as to why the men would be trying to hit back, for example. Like Keanu doesn't know that Sharon has lied about him being Albie's dad. That's probably good reason in Keanu's brain. Theo does genuinely believe that Stacey actually loves him. Doesn't explain his actions. He's still an absolute disgusting piece of shit. But in his mind, I'm sure there's a reason. So it's not super hard to suggest that they could flip this. And I feel like to do this, because we briefly talked about it before. To do this, I feel like you would have to have. If we just take the format of the 6, you have Suki, you have Stacey, you have Sharon, you have Linda, you have Denise, and you have Kathy. So, in terms of the long-running characters, you have Kathy and Sharon, who have been there a good long time, like been there since the start. You have Denise, who has been a mainstay over the last 15, perhaps coming up to 20 years now. You know, they've been there and has done a lot. And then you have Suki, who's a relative newcomer, who has kind of done similar. You also have Stacey kind of doing the similar stuff that Denise has been doing. And you have Linda, who is, in the last decade or so, become one of the more prominent characters on the show. So you have to have a mixture of veterans on the show, as well as actually being able to you went to do this, and so you need to have that balance of established characters and new characters to kind of blend them all together to make them a big fucking good thing. That's why, if I had to imagine a male version of the 6, it probably wouldn't be too dissimilar to the actual victims, I would argue. Because if you flip the way it's told, you could have a really interesting dynamic, right? Where you have Phil, you have Jack, 2 characters been on the show for years, both established, both big legacy characters, had a very prominent role, but also 2 very, very strong men in appearance, you know? The 2 very together, they're usually causing all the fucking problems. Be interesting to kind of play that against each other. I'd say Martin as well as another long-standing character that you'd have.
George.
Yeah, George would definitely be there as well. And then I'd probably say
Harvey.
You could have Harvey, and then I'd have Ravi or someone like that, you know? But you have a bit of new, bit of old, different age ranges, so you can kind of tell the difference in what the stories will be told. I
would love to see it, but I just don't want it in the next 2-3 years. I want it in the next.
Oh
5.
no, it doesn't happen. Maybe it happens in 10 years. That doesn't happen. This 6 storyline is gonna be. I still believe it's heading into a golden age, and this will be the story, and that will kind of tip it over the edge. So we now keep fucking rolling, just yeah, you know, picking up speed, picking up momentum.
But again, the one problem in this is none of the men, the way men are portrayed on EastEnders, and this might upset people. I don't care if it upsets people. Is the men on the show are pretty much showing that, yeah, we're tough men, nothing can hurt us. I know some men on the show are vulnerable, like you have Ben and Callum, who you literally say, Ben, I don't want cornflakes with chocolate spread. But how fucking dare you? How fucking dare you? Shut the fuck up. Go back in your little corner, you little weasel. I don't like you. And then they'll have a cry and grow up. Obviously you have Ben and Callum kind of, but most of the men are strong men. Literally you go, Phil, you're fat, they laugh in your face, go, ha ha ha, your minge stinks. And you're like, okay, Phil, wait to be 12 years old. You know what I mean? So it'd be very hard for me to believe in a men's 6. I would like to see it, but I just can't believe it. Because most of the men are portrayed, unless you get 6 vulnerable men who are shown to be strong but can break, then I don't know. Because George, is he going to be shocked by a murder? No. He's already kind of experienced.
He is. He's kind of, he has been viewed as a very, the way he slapped.
Yeah. The way he slapped Dean down that stairs is fucking diabolical, I tell you.
But yeah, it's just it'll be an interesting way to tell it. Be an interesting story. Plus, you could do a lot of first time stories for the show, or at least as far as I could tell. You know, obviously no one wants to wish this, but story wise, wouldn't it be interesting if there was a woman on man domestic violence story told? Even perhaps to one of the characters are viewed as slightly more macho as such, like one of the characters who, you know, probably wouldn't reach out to people if they were struggling. You know, like, wouldn't that be an interesting tale to be told? Someone who's made them entirely dependent on the woman. Like, I don't know. I just think there's a lot of really good material that people could do for it, and I like the idea, but also I'll just appreciate what we are standing for, because, like, with the 6, because we are putting 6 of the best actresses on the show, 6 of the best characters on the show in this big prominent role, and it's definitely well deserved with how strong a lot of these characters are. And it's elevating some of the characters who probably needed a bit more, like, screen time, like Denise. So this last year is fucking, like, it's like a whole other fucking character, you know? Kathy doesn't really get to do much. It's mostly just playing second fiddle to everybody else. Now she's got a big role. Now she's getting the big emotional scenes. Like, characters who are kind of lost are also now being raised to the level of everybody else. I just think it's a really cool thing to see, and that's what I look forward to under Clenshaw, really. It's a continuation of building on the foundations that have been there before. Whether it be bringing in some classic characters like Cindy to help, you know, bring together a whole other family. Like, the new additions have been great. The people who have been elevated by the recent changes, fantastic. Like, it's a very good time to be an EastEnders fan. And that's why imagining a male version of the 6 is quite implausible, but also you could see them getting the necessary time it deserved to tell some very honest and open stories about, you know, some of the stuff that men face in these circumstances. But I'm also not going to sit here and act like the men need this storyline over the women. The right people were chosen for it, and they're going to knock it out the fucking park.